It's October 1st, 2020. This is Roqe. If you, like me, grew up addicted to movies and TV, but you weren't exactly a white kid with blonde hair and a perfect turned-up nose, you might not have really ever seen yourself reflected on screen. Things have changed, of course. Conscious casting has led to a lot more diversity in Hollywood and beyond. But when it comes to people of Middle Eastern, North African, or South Asian background, we're still often invisible. Azita Ghanizada is a successful actress who's appeared in numerous hit TV shows and films. She's also a proud Afghan-American who's made it her mission to bring more people like her, like us, into significant roles on and off the camera. Azita Ghanizada joins us today. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Yes, hi there. Hope you're all doing well out there. Welcome to episode number 49 of Roqe. امیدوار هستم که کیفتون کوک باشه.
Where did that come from?
I knew it.
You see, Shaya, I always have something up my sleeve.
Where did you get that from?
I always have something. Can you please explain it to Kian now?
Oh yeah. کیفتون کوک باشه. Yeah, go for it.
کیفتون کوک باشه.
کیفتون که میفهمی.
بله.
Imagine kayf is an instrument and cook is tune. So I hope that your instrument is well tuned.
That's poetic.
That's a nice way of saying it.
I know. I always thought it just means mizun bashir.
That's
or
right.
Like you're in good
I'm always looking for alternative ways to say mizun bashin to please Shaya. Very happy to be on this episode number 49 with the Roqe team assembled here. Very happy to have Azita Ghanizada. You know, as I was doing the bills.
Ghanizade, I suppose.
No. See, Shaya? I see your wisdom has its limits. She's Afghan. So it's actually not Ghanizadeh. The way we'd say it in Farsi would be Azita Ghanizadeh, right? But she's actually Ghanizada. I know that because she told me.
2-0 Jian. Let's do this.
Shire, you're having a bad start here.
Go have a coffee.
He can't even correct us correctly. I think that's the only time you've ever tried correcting me that I've been right and you've been wrong. But thank you. Now, I was actually thinking when I was doing the bills there a second ago, introducing the show, Azita Ghanizada, Jian Ghomeshi, this is like a nightmare for Donald Trump. This is like a Proud Boys nightmare. Hearing these names, it's like, what is happening to the world? Why is this show? She's Azita, if you don't already know her, very prolific actor in Hollywood. She's been in all kinds of programs. She was one of the cast members of General Hospital, Night Shift, a show called Alpha. She's been on Ballers. She's been on Entourage. She's made a couple of feature films. But she's also been very outspoken and effective in trying to encourage MENA. This is Middle Eastern, North African, South Asian representation in casting, film production, certainly on screen. So it's great to have her on the program just to be talking about, well, that and her story. Looking forward to talking to her in a few moments. As I say, the Roqe Thursday team is here. Groovy Shaya, you've heard him. How are you, Shaya?
Oh, kayfam kuke.
You're stealing my language now. And Captain Reza.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm great. I'm fantastic.
That's the way you seduce people with that. Hello, sir. That's
hello.
Hello, sir. That's my impression of you, by the way. Hello, sir.
Sounds
That
like
nerdy
I don't know why. You don't really sound like that.
I think you always say that every episode. Hello,
I say
sir.
hello,
Hello,
sir.
sir. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
And the fabulous Keon.
Hi, Jian. Did you notice anything different today?
You are...
I put in effort. I did my hair and
You
makeup.
look
You know why?
Stunning.
Because you messaged me, at 9 or 10 p.m.? It's like, tomorrow we're taking a team photograph. I was like, a little time, please. Give me some...
More than 24
I
hours?
need to arrange my hair and makeup. People, I had to do my own hair and makeup like a peasant.
How many people do you have?
I have lots of people that need to do work on me.
She's so angry.
I am. Did my best.
Who are the peasants who are doing their hair and makeup, by the
Me
way?
today.
Okay.
I spent hours in front of the
Keon,
mirror.
so next episode is our 50th episode. So I was thinking we were going to take a team photo. We can put it up on the... But I don't. So how many days advance?
A week
do you,
ahead of time, so I can make arrangements like the night before. Literally,
You look great. You always look great. You
No,
look great
I-
when you
you're
just
such a
have the
liar.
kola cap. No, you do.
No,
You-
but I can't take a team photo with my kola cap and
Why not?
sweater,
Why
and
not? That's
because
so
I look like a
casual and
dude. I
cool.
look like a man. They'd be like, "So which one is Keon?"
You don't. You will never look like a dude. Speaking of which, I haven't seen you amongst the dudes at our gym.
I go in the mornings. I try to avoid humanity in general.
Right.
When do you go?
Yeah, I guess I go in the early evenings or in the afternoon.
Ah,
Yeah, so I miss
A lot
you.
of people there.
Yeah, so I haven't quite figured out how to navigate the mask etiquette though.
What do you mean?
What?
You put on a mask, you walk
No,
in, you
I
take
know.
it off when you
Yeah.
run.
Well,
or-
first of all, you have to have a mask in our gym, and that's a good thing. COVID cases are on the rise.
Yeah.
But all right, so then when I go, so I do a lot of cardio. My first half of the workout is I usually go for a run on the tread. Do you wear a mask on your treadmill?
Of course not. I would die. I would collapse if I did that.
Right, exactly. We don't want you to die. I don't wear a mask. So what they allow you to do is you can go in, you can take off the mask when you're on the treadmill, but then there's always like a weird, like I have to walk from the treadmill to go get the sanitizer stuff, and then so I have to put the mask back on to go a few steps. Then I get the sanitizer stuff, come back and clean. There's a lot of work. It's a lot of work with the mask on and off.
It's weird.
But anyway, that's fine. So when you're on the machine, when you're working on, but you can't control what the other people are doing.
No.
I mean, everyone is supposed to wear a mask in the gym.
Yeah.
So then I'm on the a couple of days ago. I'm on the lat pull down machine. You know the thing that you ever do that?
Yeah, well, yes, not like that. I don't know what you're doing here. Yes,
What do you mean not like that? I'm doing the lat pull down. You pull your arms up and down
Funny.
like this.
Yes, sure, that thing.
So I'm facing outward, right? I'm facing the gym. There's people who can walk in front of you.
Yeah.
And if they're walking around, they should wear the mask.
Yeah.
We've established that.
Right.
That's the etiquette.
They have to, yeah.
Right. That's the mask-a-kit.
It is,
Yeah. So then there's this huge guy, like a really large guy, it's like tank like huge, like could stomp on me,
Okay.
Not necessarily in shape huge.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have
just
the image.
and very like hairy.
Oh, no.
And like sweaty,
boy.
hairy, like probably Iranian, because he's like hairy.
I mean,
and,
if he goes to that gym, there's a high chance.
doesn't have ethics, and yeah, we have some Iranians at this.
There's a lot of
All the right
Iranians in there. You can't hide. Not in Toronto. They're everywhere.
I don't know why he doesn't have ethics, but anyway,
I just got that. What did you mean to say? Etiquette.
No. I said ethics, and
Ethics.
he's like, in other words, because you have to hear the story. Wait, I'm getting to the story, the ethics part.
all right.
But I don't know why the guy has to be Iranian to like. I'm just like dissing our culture. No, he probably was Iranian, quite frankly.
Let's face it.
But I didn't. There was no Raft or Mad. We didn't talk. We didn't. So the guy, for a huge, sweaty guy, whatever, he is walking back and forth, talking to his buddy who's right in front of me. And you know when people do them, first of all, like what do you call like in English it's like a meathead or something, like these big gym guys, even though this guy's not even in that shape.
Meathead?
Yeah, not meathead, but what would you call like a big guy who's kind of like big hairy guy,
like
sweaty guy?
I would say we have a word gulag, but
Okay.
It sounds Russian.
That's
but
true.
it's like
That's
you know
true.
the kind of guy.
But isn't you can shorten that to ghul, no? Or is it
No,
gulakh?
no, no. Gulakh is like a
Gulakh.
human version of a
Gulakh.
gorilla.
Okay.
I think.
It's a clean version.
Yeah, well, human and clean version. No, it's not clean. It's not clean at all.
Okay, gulakh. I had a little sour cream with my gulakh for lunch. Okay,
Delicious.
so the gulakh. All right, so
This tops the raw soup.
so the gulakh is walking back and forth. Straight. You know when people have that move where they put the mask underneath their chin, right?
yeah.
Like they're wearing the mask.
Yeah.
It's going behind the ears,
Yeah.
the straps, but they're wearing it. It's almost like supporting their chin. Like why not just take the So the gulakh had pulled the mask down, right?
Okay.
And he's walking back and forth, screaming to his friend, right near me, in my proximity. He has a lot of space, but and every time he talks, I'm feeling like I'm getting all the COVID from the gulakh. It's just like spreading all over me.
Sweaty, hairy.
By the way,
COVID.
why do the biggest, hairiest guys always also wear like the tank top? Like he's covering
They
himself.
wear it proudly. I'm hairy
He's
and
got
I'm liking
open
it.
armpits and and like yeah. So all the gulakh spray is coming.
So good.
I put my own mask tighter, like trying to prevent the spread of the. Anyway, the whole story is, I mean, the shameful part of this for me is that I didn't feel like it's that I didn't say anything.
What could you say? The man, he could crush you with his gulakhness.
Exactly. Even now, I'm worried he's going to come after me. He's going to hear the story.
He's listening.
But I feel like I should have, for the sake of society, I feel like I should have said anything, but I didn't say anything. First of all, I guess I could talk to one of the trainers or something.
Yeah.
But then I'm a rat. Then I'm going calling some guy out.
Go to another machine.
But I can't imagine. Right, so I have to go somewhere else.
Well, if you want to avoid the gulakh, I can imagine that's
the angry gulakh.
Oh no, it's the gulakh.
He wasn't angry. I don't know why.
You gotta stand up to the gulakhs.
But the gulakh was I didn't have the
Guts?
the fortitude. I didn't have the guts. I didn't have to stand up to the gulakh and say, "Listen, buddy, put your." I didn't try. I don't know. Would you have spoken to him?
I wouldn't say never.
No,
No. Maybe I act like that, in front of him.
You would demonstrate that you're in an animated fashion that you're putting your mask on,
maybe.
so that maybe the gulakh knows that he should do that as well.
Gulakh are smart.
Are there?
No.
What is the best strategy with the gulakh to manipulate the gulakh?
Set some traps.
Anyway, so that's my experience at our gym.
Oh no! I would suggest coming in the mornings. There's less gulakhs. There's no Persians, by the way. Persians are not morning people,
Really?
from my experience. Yeah,
They're still
they're
asleep
more
or something?
like I find in the evenings. There's many more Persians.
Yeah, this guy doesn't
It's
look like he
after
gets up. This guy doesn't get up at 5:30. Trust me. This guy gets up and
He comes
eats like
out-
12 eggs at 11 a.m. and then
He eats
comes to the gym and terrorizes people.
Eats a few cello kebabs and then comes in
Yeah.
with his kebab sweat.
Anyway, so I don't know what I'm going to... I mean, I find this whole mask thing, it's so important, and the COVID cases are going up.
Yeah.
And I've been defending going back to the gym because there's some people in my life going, I don't know, should you be going back?
I will kill anybody that tries to take away the gym again.
Right, it's great. It's
Yeah.
great. And they do
Mental
such a
health
great
and-
job. But
They do.
this was the first time I thought, you know what?
I never noticed
This
that.
guy I left sprayed full of
Yeah.
gulakh COVID. I had a full-on gulakh COVID
Was there anybody around that
coating
worked
around
there?
me. Yeah, I think probably the people who work there, they're pretty diminutive
They're
too.
probably scared of
They're
them
my
too.
size. They're normal people. They're scared of this giant Kong,
So that's
Yeah.
an anomaly. I don't think there's many gulakhs that
Gulakh
do that.
19 is it?
Listen, there's a few things I've got to announce here. First of all, we've got a new Roqe Reads. We've got a section on our website at roqemedia.com where we've got we're going to have different folks. Right now, we got one guy writing pieces, opinion pieces, and thought pieces about the content on our show. A young guy named Navon, who's a 23-year-old singer-songwriter who has just written a new piece about the Farid Zoland episode, which really affected him, talking again about copyright and compensation and recognizing our great composers and writers of Iranian heritage. So that's at roqemedia.com, a new Roqe Read from Navon. And did you notice anything when you walked into the studio area, the office area?
There's a beautiful painting.
Right.
A beautiful
Isn't
painting.
that nice?
Mm-hmm.
So so we got a new piece of art in, we talked about having our Ebreen paintings in our office space. We have a new piece of art from someone named Hamid Kuchak. He's an artist and a photographer, and he's the director of something called the Moments Art Gallery. And that's one of his pieces, which he just, likes what we're doing with Roqe, and he offered it to us. And
wow.
it's so thank you to Hamid, and thank you for the work you do for the community. And he has I'm going to shout out to his website. It's momentsartgallery.com. Moments Art Gallery. We've been getting a bunch of reaction to our episodes last week, all really positive with Shah Rukh, people loving the Shah Rukh, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting
You got some
commentary there.
mail on that,
Yeah,
and Maximini as well. We didn't get to that last week, so we'll get to the Maximini. All right, why don't we get to we're all good? We'll get to our featured guest. All right. My featured guest today is an Afghan-American actress whose dad used to work at the U.S. Embassy in Iran. It was through the diplomatic relationships that he had nurtured in that job that her family could flee turbulent conditions in Afghanistan in 1979 when she was a baby. They ended up in the Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C., and quickly became, as she tells the story, the Brown family of the neighborhood. Azita Ghanizada has certainly transformed those challenging early years and the expectations of a conservative household into an impressive and notable acting career in Hollywood and beyond. If you've been an American TV fan in recent years, it's a good bet you've seen her in one role or another. Among the shows she has made appearances in are How I Met Your Mother, Ballers, Entourage, Ghost Whisperer, The Mentalist, Veronica Mars, and General Hospital Night Shift, where she was a cast member. More recently, Azita has appeared in the feature film Complete Unknown, opposite Rachel Weisz and Michael Shannon, where she spoke Persian on screen. But beyond acting success, perhaps Azita's most significant current contribution to popular culture and representation is as the founder of the MENA Arts Advocacy Coalition, specifically advocating for the casting, representation, and recognition for performers of Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asian background. And right now, Azita Ghanizada joins me from Los Angeles, California. Hello.
Hi, Jian. How are you?
Very happy to have you on the program. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to speak to you and to get to know about your program and everything that you're doing and putting out there for the diaspora. It's brilliant, and I love it.
I thank you. I mean, to be clear, you are of Afghan descent, not Iranian, but many of us would consider you a sister based on your culture, your traditions, maybe especially the way Westerners would have seen you growing up. Have you often had Iranians clamoring to claim you as one of our own, or is this a new experience for you?
No, all the time, actually. A lot of people, and because, my mom actually speaks fluent Persian Farsi as well, and so it's so interesting that whole continent in that area, Iran, Afghanistan, and India are such an integral part of my upbringing. My mom spent a lot of her life in India, and genetically and ancestrally, I have met much Indian heritage, and I also have some Iranian ancestry as well. And I think just my family appreciated all of the cultures, and it was something that was very alive in our home. We never felt separate from those parts of the world, I always felt like they were my brothers and sisters. One, because we had similar backgrounds and stories, and two, because they looked like me.
Right.
And I needed people that looked like me around me.
Well, now that we know that you've got some ancestry, we'll definitely claim you as one of our own. Although it'll be like, she is 100% Irani. Like, it'll be like this debate that is had amongst Iranians who want to claim everything as, Tom Cruise, Tom Khurustiga, he's ours.
Yes, exactly.
So, listen, I want to get into your story because it's certainly a very interesting one, and I love the trajectory because I consider it a real success story in terms of what you've overcome. But let me start first with some of the issues in which we're going to deal with. We're living in this moment where, I guess, despite the current person occupying the White House, or maybe because of him, there has been this dramatic rise in awareness around identity, around representation, around cultural appropriation. We just had the news that the Oscars are adopting new regulations to bring more diversity to the awards. This consciousness wasn't necessarily the case in the past, even a few years ago when you first founded the MENA Arts Advocacy Coalition. Do you feel like folks are just catching up to you?
That's an interesting question. I do feel in some regards that people are claiming their identity more in the last few years. And I do think that there has been, a turn at people really needing to look at themselves and say, wait a minute, why am I being otherized? Why am I living in a country or in a state of the world where I'm being otherized? Because often they probably didn't see themselves as other. And so you have a reckoning with a large part of people from, the Middle East through North Africa, where they have to recognize that they're being othered. And so now they're claiming and taking their power back and being proud of their cultural identity. And I also truly believe that there's this big push from the millennials, where the millennials are really out there pushing their identity and saying, I'm interested in where I come from. This is my culture. This is who I am. I was raised in America, but you're not going to take that away from me. And you're not going to limit me in like my scope of who you think I am. And so there's also this movement on social media from the younger generation that's coming out and saying, no, I'm Iranian American, I'm Afghan American, I'm Afghan, I'm, whatever it is that how they're claiming themselves, and they're taking great pride in that. And when someone takes pride in where they're from, it gives other people the prowess to take pride in themselves.
Of course, there are others then who also, though, at the same time take umbrage at being othered. Say, I'm not a minority. We're white. We'll get to that because I want to bring that up with you. But just on this note about the Oscars, let me just ask you about this because I think I saw either a tweet from you or on Instagram you were celebrating this, as I would suspect that you would, based on being the founder of the MENA Arts Advocacy Coalition. But there have been many high-profile folks in the entertainment industry who've come out against the new Oscar rules. And I should say, even on our Roqe team, we have one of our guys, we call him Captain Reza here. He's Iranian. He's an actor and he is, in the industry. He's appeared in some feature films and he opposes it. He says, I want awards to be based on merit, not having anything to do with race or ethnic background. What do you say to those folks?
So I'm going to just really quickly kind of educate everybody on that. The standard A, where they, need you to have 2 out of, the cast to be, of those categories, which were African American, Asian American, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islander, and now for the first time ever, including MENA, which is what my applause was about, was included in the standard practices and guidelines. Now, last year in 2019,
so again, to clarify, in case anybody needs to be reminded of MENA, that you're saying that Middle Eastern people, North African people, South Asian people are now included in this category of diversity, and we weren't before.
Yes,
right.
We were not. Before we were counted as Caucasian, which completely erased us from hiring practices, to be honest, without the recognition of people going, oh, that person's MENA. So when they're like, well, I have to hire someone that's from these 5 categories. Before MENA existed there, when they met a Middle Eastern actor or a North African actor, they didn't think that they could hire them because it didn't go towards those kinds of standards. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So when diversity became important, actually, the Middle East and North Africa disappeared from the conversation because we were always put into the Caucasian box. And so our group started working less and really only receiving, for me personally, only receiving roles that I needed to otherize myself in order to get a job. It was like, oh, wear a hijab, or do you speak another language? Or if when they needed a terrorist, then of course they were going to find authenticity within the region and within the group. Right. But getting those everyday roles that you could go and fight for were not available to us anymore because we were no longer counted. When diversity rules really became hot and important in 2015, we became invisible. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we made ourselves invisible. We were happy to kind of fly under the radar and get the jobs and do whatever. There was nobody really standing up and fighting for us. There was no, like in the African-American community, there wasn't this large charge to say, we need to be, there's no NAACP saying, hey, you have to include African-American people in your, contracts, in the clauses of how you hire in standard hiring practices, because TV is 90% white, and that's not even the actual accurate representation of what the world looks like. Right. And so we didn't have an NAACP saying we need to have some MENA people because that you're not accurately representing us. And so that's how MENA Arts Advocacy was born, was to, when I realized, because I was told by a casting executive, I was coming off of a TV series, Alphas, and I thought this was a moment for me. I had billboards everywhere. I was working with incredible actors, and I was not getting TV shows. I tested 3 times that year, and casting director called me and let me know that I was unhirable because I was not the diverse choice.
Wow. You see, I was going to ask you about this because, you would seem to have done quite well in Hollywood. Your IMDb page is packed with credits, some of which I cited in the introduction. And I can imagine somebody in our community, let alone a white person, saying, oh, you're doing just fine. And how do you know how much farther you would have gotten if you were a white blonde actress with a turned up little nose?
Well, that's the whole thing. I was never white enough to play the lead. So I would come in and be the best friend, or I would be, the tech person, or, the boss somewhere in there. And I would service the lead's story, right? And that's usually a diverse hire. And when you watch TV, you'll start to see that, there's a formula to it. But I was no longer diverse enough to play and service the white lead story, or the black lead story now, which is prevalent in television, which is amazing. I was not ethnic enough. And so I had to fight to create some recognition for our group outside of being in the Caucasian box. And so that's where MENA came in 2017. We got that. With SAG-AFTRA and the producers, we created the first new casting category in 37 years. And that was actually, Asaf Cohen, who works with SAG-AFTRA, helped me do that. And a Persian actor, Amir Talai, was a big spokesperson for us on that as well. And then an Egyptian actor named Amin El Gamal was also very, active in helping us push forward the category. And so it was kind of this, group from the Middle East and North Africa and South Asia kind of fighting for recognition, and we achieved it. And with that, I've been going around pushing the MENA, Middle East and North African, because it was part of what the U.S. Census was trying to roll out for 2020.
Right.
So I was pushing MENA from the U.S. Census, and I have a couple professors that I was working with throughout Hollywood. So now it's on all the breakdowns, and I worked with the Casting Society of America, and now it's, so now I was educating all the casting directors and the producers. Well, MENA is Middle East, North Africa, and that includes every country.
By the way,
Morocco,
it's not just about casting. You may know, parenthetically, there's a campaign called Iranians Count, which is trying to encourage Iranian Americans to sign up for the census in your country, because Iranians traditionally have shied away from signing up for anything. Yes. So they're not counted. And so that means we don't get the benefits that we would get of being actually a sizable minority group in
we're undercounted, right. Jian. This is the thing. So this year with the census, because my org partnered with them, and we are allowed, for the first time ever, we didn't get the MENA category, but we can write in our country of origin in the other box or in the Asian box. Now, the reason why this is so important is because we are so grossly undercounted. So when you're going for a job and you're being hired and they're like, well, they're not really, there's only 1%, you only make 1% of the population. How are you even counting that? We go into the white box.
Right.
So you're not even accurately counting us. So maybe we're 3.5%, maybe we're 4.5%, maybe we're 5.5%. So that when you see that only 1% of us or 0.6% of us have representation, you realize how much we're diminished. And that is in a large part due to the cultures kind of diminishing themselves and their own presence. So it's so important for people in the United States of Middle Eastern and North African and South Asian descent to write in their country of origin so that we can be properly counted for the first time, so that we can get health funding, so that we can get congressional representation. The data matters. And I know it sounds so silly to some people because they don't think about it. But if anything, this election in the last 4 years have taught us that people need to understand the importance of the census. They need to understand the importance of their local ballots, their judges and their DAs. They need to understand the importance of their state elections and then their federal elections. People are always just focused on the big picture as opposed to what's impacting their life every day. And for our groups throughout this entire region of the world, erasing our own identity because there's shame. Jian, there's shame associated with being from our part of the world for a large group of them because of the way we are represented. Because we are overrepresented in the news and in the media as bad or terrorists or dangerous or violent. And so we have to start claiming that we're not, and that we're everyday citizens, and that's a small fraction of, a population that are shitty people.
Okay.
Bad people. Excuse my language.
It's okay. So slow down. You talk very fast. You've got a lot to say. You've clearly done this before. Let me pick up on a couple of things there. First of all, let me close the folder on the Oscars thing and just push back and just get a specific response from you on that. So if when Reza says, okay, I want recognition, I want representation, but when it comes to the awards, I don't want to win an award because I've been put into a category, and is he diminishing himself then?
Here's the answer to that. Last year, 2019 and 2018, 95 out of the 100 top 100 films already met standard A. It's already in practice. 95 out of the top 100 films already met standard A. And so what this does is it elevates the highest level of casting to say, if and where there's a film project that is Academy Award worthy, that they might think outside of the box of what they might do. They might look a little harder for a performer that isn't their 5 go-to, and they might open up that field for others.
Right.
Now, it's not something that is going to change the landscape tremendously, but it does put the idea in creators and producers' heads when they see those different categories to potentially give a MENA person the chance. And that's the difference that it makes, because we're not overriding the business. What people don't understand is that this is already in play. It's just that people don't want to see that it's a recommendation.
That was the perfect answer. Let me pick up on something else you mentioned too, which is about shame. And you're talking about that as a girl who grew up in Virginia. And I relate to that as a boy who grew up in the suburbs of London and Toronto. And Hanif Qureshi would relate to that as somebody who grew up in London. So I just want to ask you, when you're talking about these MENA rules, and you are talking about casting and recognition in Hollywood, but I'm imagining, since you founded this coalition and have been telling these stories, you're hearing that this generalizes across the world, right? This isn't just an American issue.
I don't believe it's an American issue because, I have performers from the UK and other parts of the world consistently asking me how I can help them learn how to create change in their parts of the world.
Right.
And so, I'm actively working with performers in the UK and in Canada. A lot of Canadian actors reach out to me and say, how did you do this? Can you help us? Maybe the United States is more progressive than Canada, or, in the UK, it's Caucasian and then it's BAM, which is Black and other minority ethnics. Mm-hmm. And so, most of the MENA community and Swana community, however you want to call it, there feel completely erased.
Right. I love it when we're the other minority ethnics. We're in this category, in some bullpen of ethnic people. Yeah.
Other. And so in that space, it's like all other ethnic minorities. And so they feel completely invisible and don't really know how to actually kind of create this change. And it's actually taking people that have some success in their respective fields that are running into these walls to say, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and I want to create this change. And that's really how it begins, is from, just takes a handful of committed people to say, this isn't good enough, and we have to change this. And hopefully what we've done in the United States sets the practice and the guidelines for the rest of the country. Rest of the world.
Right. I was going to say, I'm not sure that anyone has uttered the words, maybe the U.S. is more progressive than Canada, at least since Obama. But maybe in this particular category, they might say that.
That's what the performers say.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of messages from them. The Canadian, Middle Eastern, North African performers feel very erased.
This group is, to be honest, I wish this was around when I was. You probably wish this was around when you were younger. I mean, this is we've needed this for years. Let me get into your story and come back to some of these specific challenges. Azita, learning about you and your story, honestly, it's an exercise in learning about strength. I feel you're very inspiring to me. You've overcome not just coming from the Middle East as a refugee to the West, but what you've described as a very conservative family structure as well. So let's start with the refugee part. You said you don't even know your real birthday. How so?
Well, we fled, so we were asylum seekers. So we were political refugees, not refugees, but we fled. We took what we could and we got out of there. And there's two parts. There's two answers to that question. One, getting a birthday certificate or a birth certificate or whatever isn't common practice in Afghanistan. I think they register you at some point, but it's not even really like when I did receive my certificate of, my certification of citizenship, I was able to get it because of 9/11. Because once 9/11 happened, they established an Afghan embassy in the United States again for the first time. And so the embassy was able to take my school work and my mother's word that this was a valid birthday for me. And on the birth certificate issued from the embassy, it says, it has and never will be common practice to issue birth certificates in Afghanistan. And so that's really the truth. But whatever paperwork we really did have, we just left. My parents just packed a bag and got out of there. And so we didn't bring much with us. They barely brought themselves, We just kind of showed up and had what very little possessions we had on us. And so that's kind of how we landed in Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C.
And you've also said there were not a lot of toys or Barbies when you were growing up. How aware were you that you didn't have things that other kids had, or that your life was different?
I think I did. I think I was aware at school. And this is where the shame comes in. Coming from, and I can't imagine, especially with the politicization of Islam and Iran and the revolution and everyone having to navigate these horrible stories with what their family is enduring while they're, in the United States. For us, it was, my mom never kept us from children losing limbs in landmines. She would openly show us photos and tell us that's what we escaped. And, it's not the healthiest thing for a child to see. And I just don't know that my mom knew what healthy was. It's no fault to hers. She just kind of was in post-traumatic stress and war stress. And she just didn't, and had small children to raise, and was trying to deal with getting her parents and brothers and sisters out of refugee camps and into the United States. And they never hid any of that from us. They didn't make life feel easy. They made us aware of everything that was going on in our country and the turbulence. And the news was on all the time. And so I became very aware of global affairs from a young age. And I would go back to school, after Christmas, and everybody would be talking about what they got for Christmas. And I would lie, and I would just make up toys. One, because we didn't celebrate Christmas, but two, it wasn't really something my parents did, was buy us toys, maybe one or two, maybe maybe we had a Candyland board game that we shared between the three of us, but it wasn't a big part of my childhood. My childhood was world affairs, television, and chores, leadership, school.
But you've also
You
said,
know?
you've also said, I didn't know I was different until others pointed it out. And I so relate to that, because I really didn't, I don't know if that I really knew how different I was until the revolution happened and the hostage crisis, and I'm this kid and they start calling me a terrorist and stuff. Before that, even things that I can now look back, and I mean, when I was growing up in England, they called me Blackie, which is comical because I'm, I'm not black. I'm brownish maybe, but I just thought that was a nickname. I just thought like it's like soccer players have nicknames, and so I'm Blackie. So it really hit when the hostage crisis happened. What was this moment where you found out you were different because others were pointing it out?
I think it was probably like kindergarten, because we don't know we're different. We're just kids. Yeah, we're playing. We love the same things. We want to ride bicycles and climb trees and play in our imaginary forts, and like we just want to be children and we want to live in our imaginations. But my sister, who's a little older than me, probably 4 years or so, she kind of, I think, was very protective and felt a lot of the looks or whatever it might have been. She probably felt different earlier than I did. But I just remember having some rocks kind of chucked our way and telling us to go back to our country. And I was like, what? And again, when I moved into Virginia, it was very white and it was very blonde and it was all American. And we were probably, one of 2 or 3 ethnic minorities in the town of Vienna at the time. And so it was a real kind of culture shock for the town, not for us. I wasn't aware of it, but it was for the town. And so in those moments, I kind of started to know that's when, even though I didn't feel like I was different, I was going to be made aware that I was different. And that just kind of carried on through middle school and even through junior high. I was just, telling my partner that, I remember I had a crush on a boy, and some older kid walked by and called me Saguchi. And it was like a nickname that he had for my sister because he couldn't say her name, Azita Ghanizada, so he called her Saguchi. And he's like, hey, it's little Saguchi, and he just made fun of me in some way that the boy then stopped hanging out with me.
Oh.
And I just was so embarrassed.
Right.
And I know that sounds so silly, right? But it's the thing that when people are like, well, you're attractive and things must be easy for you. And I'm like, I never saw, you have to understand, I was never made aware of that until I was in my, late teens, early 20s. That wasn't the way that I was treated.
As I was learning about you and researching, I'm not sure if I have this right. I read somewhere or I heard somewhere, when you were a kid, I have this sweet impression of you, and also a testament to this empowerment that you seem to have had from a very young age, which I'm not sure where it comes from. But if I have this right, when you were a kid, you learned English and you would speak to your mom in Farsi and Dari and help her navigate this world in this small town, Vienna, outside of Washington, D.C., in Virginia. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, with immigrant parents might have done that, but my Farsi and my Dari isn't as great as it could be because I spoke English to my mom, so she would learn it. And I just remember watching her get frustrated and people kind of talking down to her. And these would be like, administrators or police officers or whomever it was. And so then I would kind of speak the English and kind of get in there. And this was very young. And in some weird sense, it kind of made me a parentified child. Like I felt like I had to protect and look after my mother, because people were speaking to her with respect because English was her 5th language. And I then kind of took on the crux of making sure that we were respected.
And you're
that,
like 5 at this time, right?
Yeah, very little. Like first grade. I mean, like I was the one that spoke and to the school teachers. I was the one that created the plans around my future and what I was going to study, and like, well, I was going to do this after school program, And so I kind of took on those responsibilities pretty early on. One, to protect my family, but 2, also because I needed to, because nobody else was really doing it for me.
That's a lot for a little kid.
Yeah, it was a lot for a little kid. I can't wait to be a little kid one day. That's probably why I'm an actor.
Right. You've talked about the power of I mean, you did a TEDx talk that included this, the power of pop culture and television in helping you to assimilate into the West, helping you to understand the West, helping you to learn the social culture and helping you fall in love with the West. But you were also not seeing, I'm guessing, any examples of you when you would look at the screen, right?
No, not at all. I mean, I definitely saw some stuff in the Cosby Show, or Different World, like Lisa Bonet. I really liked Blazing Saddles. It was on with commercials on like the UPN on Saturdays, because of the racism that was navigated in that film. And I felt like I understood what they were going through and that they could laugh at it. I could laugh at it, But the culture, the glamour and the culture of America through TV was everything for me. And it was also a time when my family didn't really fight and things didn't feel that far away from us. And so I really loved everything about TV. I could tell you when the commercial breaks were going to come on and how long they were. Like I was obsessed. And I would start to give my Emmy speech, I think, when I was in the 7th grade.
Wow.
I was just determined that I was going to win an Emmy. And I had this big dream of being on, like my mom was obsessed with Dynasty in Dallas when I was little. Mm-hmm. And, I just always
hotbed
thought,
of Afghan and Iranian casting, Dynasty in Dallas, yeah.
And nobody, nobody looked like us.
Zero. We had no chance. Yeah.
Nobody. And also, and I say this, and sometimes I'm like, I wonder if there was someone that just was Americanized themselves, Yeah. I always think that. I'm like, I always say, oh yeah, there aren't, but I'm like, what if there was?
Well, there were certain people, like I remember Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, like he was around my age, like he was this kid, and I remember thinking maybe he's like Iranian or something, and he's made himself, like he calls himself Ralph Macchio because he kind of had olive skin, and I don't know what his background is, maybe he's Italian or something, but I don't think he was Iranian.
I think he's probably Italian.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But exactly, any brown person, you were clinging on to them to find out if they were anything like you. Are they close to you? Well, that kind of looks like me. And I just didn't see it. It just wasn't available. And there was even very limited African-American, representation but, I connected more to some of the, Black television shows that I saw and that stuff because I felt like they navigated and dealt with issues that I could understand. And Who's the Boss? Because Alyssa Milano was also kind of brown. And I was like, well, she's kind of ethnic, which is what Hollywood thinks too.
Honestly, when we had Tehran, who's a Black Iranian comedian, and Banafsheh Akhlaqi on last month talking about how the Black Lives Matter movement in the States relates to us, how we're part of it. I was thinking back to the fact that, I was enamored of Spike Lee films. When I saw Do the Right Thing, I kept thinking this is about me, and it was a strange thing to tell people because they'd sort of go, well, you're not a black kid in Brooklyn, what do you mean? And it was, no, this is my experience. It really resonated way more than watching Brad Pitt would, right? I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. One of the things that you do, though, in from what I understand as a kid or growing up in your teens, etc., to deal with being the ethnic kid or the ethnic family in your community in Virginia, is that you become an overachiever. You enter everything, you win every award, you do everything. This is, I'm guessing, an attempt to compensate or mask feeling like you didn't fit in. And not to be too psychological, but would you say that that's what you were doing?
I definitely think that all persons from our part of the world, it's an immigrant mentality that we are achievement oriented. We feel like if we achieve enough, if we change the narrative, if we change the story, then we're good enough. Relaxation isn't a big part of our, we're like, who relaxes? When is there time to relax?
Right.
It's just kind of like, well, what's next? And what can I do? And what kind of achievements can I create so that I can then, one, fill that gaping hole of like, oh, okay, I do belong here. In fact, I'm just as good as you, if not better. And two, it's to, be the next generation for my family, to create a legacy and a change so that they didn't leave everything behind for no reason, to make them proud so that they have something and some pride so that it wasn't all for nothing. And so I think that we all kind of carry that guilt and that responsibility on our shoulder to make our family proud. And I'm glad that I can do it with my name intact. You know what I mean? Like, I want to do it as a Ghanizada and, continue to kind of open doors for other Ghanizadas or Jahanpours or whatever it is so that they can also do it in the way that they want to do it.
But you didn't do that without at first dealing with some resistance from the family. I mentioned some challenges that you had, one being a political refugee, but then the other being that you grew up in what you call an extremely conservative family. What does that mean, extremely conservative?
My family was definitely more on my mom's side, very religious, very culturally controlling. And I think that that's something still that the Afghan community navigates. And I can't speak for the Iranian community per se. I do know that there's a good amount of Iranians in the arts, which is incredible. And I'm looking forward to the day when there's more Afghans in the arts. But, being an artist when I was little created sharm, for your name. You would bring shame to your family because that wasn't a real profession. And as a girl, if they were to think you were going to become an actress, then that meant you would be close to boys. And if you were going to be close to boys, then that meant that people would think that you were, of course, doing things with those boys. And being an actress basically meant you were selling yourself. And so no matter which way you looked at it, it was a shameful career, and it wasn't something that they took seriously at all. And wanting to be an actress wasn't even something I spoke out loud. We weren't allowed to do things after school unless they were related to the academics. And I didn't even, I probably took theater in the 7th and 8th grade and a little bit in high school, but I wasn't allowed to do plays after school. And so I wasn't even someone who was able to start studying acting properly until I was 21. And so, kind of breaking free and breaking that cultural repression, oppression, I should say, from my family was me saying, I'm doing this and I'm going to walk away from you guys. And I'm going to pack this bag and I'm going to show up in Hollywood and I don't really need anyone's permission and I'll sustain myself and I'll work 5 jobs. And I did.
And how'd that go with the family?
It wasn't great. Not in the beginning. Obviously, there's that shock and awe. I don't know how it was for you, but when you move away from home, like especially when you're a girl, the parents are like, oh my God, what's going to happen to her? Someone's going to steal her. It's going to be too hot. She might get sick. Just
how's she going to eat? Mom, I have food. No, you don't have food.
No, yes, exactly. Like, I wish it was just not she's going to eat. They're like, she's going to be stolen and like kidnapped and
stolen. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They were just more, extreme in their fears.
Right.
So, it didn't go over well. And I would probably say it I didn't care. And I know that that's a really kind of blunt way to put it, because a lot of people ask me how I was able to even enter the arts coming from the background that I had. And my family's, very Muslim, and that was something that they all saw as like, a hindrance to becoming an actress. And I was like, honestly, I did this for me, and I gave them the first 17 years of my life.
Well, by the way,
I did everything that I could.
21 years old is not. It is young for a Middle Eastern woman to leave the family, but it's not young as somebody who's aspiring to be an actor. I mean, you.
No, I left home when I was 17.
Ah, okay.
I went to university, and then I showed up to Hollywood when I was almost 21.
But did you go? What did you go to university for?
I went to Virginia Tech. I studied English and communications. I thought I was going to become Christiane Amanpour.
Okay.
I felt like that I could do the journalist and go the journalist route, and that would satiate my family's.
And I'm guessing that probably was more acceptable than I'm going to go to Hollywood and be an actress 4 years later, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, graduating, I knew that wasn't my dream, and being in Hollywood was the dream. And I was going to give that dream to myself. And if I failed miserably at it, then at least I failed miserably on my own terms. And it was going to be my choice, because it's my life at the end of the day. And that was very clear to me. And so there was a little bit of a break from even just having that kind of responsibility and duty to family. I had a responsibility and duty to myself. And ultimately, I've serviced my family and the culture. The culture didn't want me to do it either. And there was a big part of backlash, a lot of online hate when Alphas came out, a lot of people saying that I was a whore, and to stop saying
I was Afghan people saying that?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, a lot of online hate, death threats, rape threats, and it was not comfortable.
Because why? Because you.
I think there's like a scene in Alphas where like I kiss one of the female co-stars, and it was like, how dare you? Me taking agency over myself and my body is not something that people want, and a big part of our culture.
But isn't it also true that, once you become a success, which I would think you are now, or seen that way, that the culture then comes around and celebrates you, and it's a dichotomy, because they've done everything they can to prevent you from becoming successful, but once you get there, it's like, we always knew she's our star, or whatever, right? So,
a million times, yes.
Yeah.
I love to tell this. So I was on an episode of Castle, and I played a dominatrix, and it's such a fun episode of television, and I loved the part. And my mom watched it, and she called everybody she knew, and she was like, Azita is on ABC tonight on Castle, and she looks so pretty. And I'm like, Mom, I'm playing a dominatrix. She's like, I don't care. Your makeup was so nice.
Yeah.
I'm like,
great.
Wow, that's a big 180 lady. Yeah, that's a big one. And my makeup looked good. So it was okay that I was a dominatrix. She didn't care. She thought it was funny. She got a good chuckle out of it, and she appreciated it. But, that wasn't the route the first, several years before I started working. And then now it's just like, now through the highest level of government, I'm speaking to Afghans, and they're all so proud, and so it's wonderful, but it was a journey to get to that.
No, now it's like, my daughter, she has done a TED Talk. That's like, your goal now. But when did you? Let's now work back to your advocacy work and conscious casting, etc. When did it? So you go to LA. You're in your 20s. When did it become clear to you that you're not going to have the opportunities that a Western white woman or man, obviously for that matter, might have in Hollywood? Or did you just always know that? When did it become real, granular to you?
It didn't become so real to me, because right away I started to read for really big films, like Disney films, because I was exotic, like I looked like a princess from another world, or I looked like some sort of an alien creature. I was not the typical looking girl. So I got like pretty big things, out the bat, and it was very interesting. And it was when I think probably, let's see, I kind of was working steadily. There was a writer's strike in 2007 or 8. I got night shift, the primetime soap, so I took that during the strike, and it was just after. And then I started working kind of consistently. And 2009, I did a TV show with Sam Shepard and Carrie Elways from The Princess Bride, and then I did Alphas, the pilot, and then it got picked up, and it was coming out of Alphas around 2013, which I kind of realized there was a big hole for me.
There's a ceiling.
It was actually, yeah. I mean, that was like a pretty big hole. Now, going way back to when I first started, like in the very beginning, I'd say like 2004, there was like managers I would meet were really confused with what to do with me. Well, who are you? Are you Eva Mendes? Is she J-Lo? Like, there's only one J-Lo. Like, can you be Latin? Can we like change your name to something Latin? But you kind of look European. Like, we could just make you a brunette. There was like this big, what do we do with you? There's no one like you. And so it was more from the casting world was kind of like open, would stay open to me and try to find places for me. But it was my representatives in the agency in the town that wanted to shift me. They wanted me to become more easily castable. They're like, well, you're going to get your chance at 1 or 2 things, but how do we get you a chance at 200 things? And that was kind of the difference. It's like, did I want to take my chance at these 1 or 2 really big things, or did I just want to be able to like get out there for hundreds of things? Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what the right choice was. Did I want to have more castings and be more accessible and, be ambiguous in a way that really kind of, led people away from culturally identifying me? But I didn't want to do that. And, I had kind of come to Los Angeles, like, all of like 9/11 and everything else. And like, I was very identifiable as Afghan during that period. And so when I was kind of really taking off as an actor, and they were like, well, do we change you? Do we shift you? And do we not? I felt like there was a responsibility to not turn my back on my identity, especially because of 9/11.
You don't want to just become a Hispanic actor because you can get the gigs. Yeah.
I didn't want to become, Madison Gates, because I could kind of maybe be ambiguous or something, and then just be like, oh, I'm Italian and part Afghan, I like whatever it is, and just kind of make up wherever I'm from to get the job, which, by the way, a lot of people have done, and more power to them.
And really, that would have
my
worked.
Journey.
I mean, is it really that ridiculous? I mean, that if you changed your name and said I'm Italian, that you would be cast in ways? I mean, you still look like you, and you still have the same amount of talent. Would it really have made a difference?
We don't know. I mean, it's a sliding doors thing, I have no idea. I think it would have made the journey less tumultuous at times.
For sure. And the name,
to not have to walk with my cultural identity stamped on me all the time.
Right.
To not have to walk into every room and explain to people what 9/11 was would have been a great way to actually just get into the room and act, instead of have to sit down and talk to people for 20 minutes.
Right.
About
and even saying you're Afghan, even saying Afghanistan, I'm guessing, because it's not that different from being Iranian, but maybe even worse after 9/11, in the sense that then it's like, oh, the place where there's the war, and what do you think of, I don't know what happened in 9/11. I get like you have to deal with all these questions, right?
Yes. Oh my God. Oh, you're poor people, and what they do to the women, and what do you think of the Taliban, and have you guys dealt with any terrorists? And like, oh, do the women look like you? I'll sign up for the war. That was the statement. Just kind of very, or women from your part of the world don't look like you. I'm like, have you seen women from my part of the world? You're like, what are you talking about? Like, your malnourished, like, Google images of people suffering from war is not representative of the beauty and diversity of our cultures.
Right. I think it was.
And
I think it
so-
was actually Navid Negahban on our show couple weeks ago, who was saying maybe a month ago he was on. I think he said was it Navid? He said that he didn't get a role because they said, yeah, it was him. He said that they said you don't look Iranian enough. He said,
Yeah.
but I grew up I'm Iranian. I'm from Mashhad, and it was like, no, you don't quite have the look. You don't look Iranian.
Oh my God. Nobody is more Iranian than Navid. I mean, come on. Like Navid is like a walking like poster for Iran. Like
not enough to
glory.
get cast. Yeah.
I've never played an Afghan. Ever. Like, I mean, yes, they'll like been hired for a part that was traditionally Afghan or traditionally Iranian or whatever. Usually what happens is they have the part and then I'm like, well, this is where I'm from. Like these are my cultural identities. Like, I'm from Afghanistan. We were in Iran when I was a baby. I can speak Farsi and, Dari. My mother grew up in India. Like we can play in that region of the world, but I'd like to be culturally from my part of the world. Do you know what I mean? Like if I can change her name, in the film I have coming out next year called Kilroy is Here, she was written as Sarah Gomez. And it was an offer. And when I got the film, it was still Sarah Gomez. And so I spoke to Kevin Smith, the director, and his producer, Andy McElfresh. And I said, when I got there, I was like, what's really cool is that you guys have got me, someone who's never represented on films. Can we change her name to something more reflective of culture? And they're like, okay, well, maybe give us some options. And I was like, well, can we say Sarah Sadiq, which is, I think it might be Pakistani or Afghan, but it's in that world, and they're like, well, let's see if we can get it approved. And they're like, sure. So now in the film, it's like, Sarah Sadiq, will you marry me?
But sometimes it doesn't matter, right? I mean, I was just rewatching because I'm a fan of the show, so I rewatched your episodes. But you in Ballers, you play a radio producer or a radio exec at one point, and it kind of doesn't matter where you're from. I mean, in that case, in fact, you have a sort of empowered role in that one, right?
Yeah, but originally she was written as Jan, and so the producers. Steve Levinson, he changed it to Safia kind of right away when they hired me, just in the script and then just in the credits and whatnot. And if it was going to come up, like if we had the opportunity, it was the last season. And so their episodes were already written, but they were like, if we had the opportunity to bring you back, we could have done more at the radio station with you and John David. And then if Safia would have come up, it would have come up. And so that's part of the goal, is that I'm not on screen as Jan, that I'm on screen as Safia,
right.
And that I'm not on screen as Sarah, Gomez, I'm on screen as Sarah Sadiq, because naming is so important. If we can then start to layer in these names into the culture, so then people aren't so shocked when they hear a Sadiq or they hear a Safia, it doesn't surprise them. If they hear a Ghanizada, if they hear it 10 times, then it becomes normal.
This might be a weird question, but does it make a difference to you in your acting if your name is Gomez or Sadiq at the character's name, or
no?
You could act, you could do the Sarah Gomez part.
If honestly, if I'm not a big part of the show, if it's just like me coming in and it's just it's a job so that I can pay my mortgage, it's just like, okay, cool. And her name is like Olivia. Like I'm not gonna go, well, I can't play Olivia. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, yeah, it's fine. This isn't my battle to fight. It's
how
okay.
Dare you
not
call
every
me Olivia?
Single thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not every single thing has to be that important or a fight. But when I can and I have the opportunity, it's about also teaching the producers and the creators to write a character like Safia. Do you know what I mean? Because they think of Jan. So why not think of Safia?
Right. So let me ask you, because you are. I get to ask you this question because you're in it. You're appearing on big shows. You know these people. You know how it works in Hollywood. You've been there for 15 years or longer. I've talked a lot about a film called Not Without My Daughter on this show. It's a film that I consider terribly offensive and was the impetus for my coming out ethnically when I started university and that film came out, because I realized that Iranians were being portrayed so horribly. And that film famously does not employ any Persian actors, or close to zero. The lead male, supposedly an Iranian doctor, is played by the English actor of Spanish descent, Alfred Molina. But And you could sort of say, okay, well, that was the 90s, and people are more conscious now. And yet, Prince of Persia, I mean, it's called Prince of Persia, was made in 2010, and Jake Gyllenhaal was the Persian. So is it really that hard for Hollywood to find us and cast actual Iranians? What is the disconnect there?
So it's so funny. I mean, I bring up Prince of Persia because that film bombed in the United States. And I think that what people learn through those big mistakes is that people want authenticity. Nobody looks at Jake Gyllenhaal and thinks, wow, he's the Prince of Persia. No, nobody is thinking that. So, what's going on outside?
Not even the kid who's screaming that behind you agrees that Jake Gyllenhaal is not.
He's like, he got upset that Jake Gyllenhaal was the Prince of Persia. Right. But kind of having those so what it is at the end of the day, it's dollars and cents, and it's still happening. Alfred Molina just played an Afghan warlord or something in Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. So the onus somehow.
Alfred Molina, he's on a streak. If you've got a part to play, if you got a Middle Eastern role to play, Alfred will take the role. Yeah. Great actor, by the way. But
terrific. Oh my God, he's a terrific actor. But let's get Tony Shalhoub. You know what I mean? Or find the next Tony Shalhoub. But so basically with something like the Prince of Persia, when it doesn't do well stateside, then you start to learn that people actually want authentic representation and kind of post. And FYI, Tina Fey did Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. So Tina Fey should have known better because she's such an advocate. Right. And so it's like really
Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart did Rosewater and cast
Jon Stewart.
Gail Garcia Bernal in the lead role instead of an Iranian. Yeah.
And that's because our community is so invisible and there's nobody speaking out against these kinds of things. It's very rare that our community kind of does a op-ed or a thought piece or writes something in the Hollywood Reporter and says, this is discriminatory and we need representation because there are better actors. And so it's just
so we are, when it comes to MENA, you and what you're representing, we are particularly behind. It's not just that conscious casting happens in general. We are, I mean, you cannot imagine Russell Crowe being cast as Black Panther, right?
No,
but Alfred Molina can be the Afghan or the Iranian. So we're still,
it's just, and it's gone on forever. Like, here's an example I love to give. And the book Captain 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, right? Captain Nemo, Captain Nemo is.
Sure.
He is Indian in the book.
Oh.
But he's Michael Caine, right? We don't know. So throughout history, we have lost our own heroes, our own fictional heroes, and our own characters have been whitewashed.
Right.
And we just don't even know to the scope of how much. And so when people are like, oh, how do you feel that like Idris Elba played like a Norse god? I'm like, thank God. It's a mythical, like a mythical place.
Right,
and until there's parody, I'm okay with Dev Patel playing whatever the magician was that he played, who was a white man, in that space. Like we need a little bit of parody in some of these spaces. But the truth is that with things like 2010 and Jake Gyllenhaal and the way that the box office the people in the United States did not show up for that box office, that is messaging to Hollywood. And so in the last 4 or 5 years, and especially for the MENA community, since we got the category, and I've been out there pushing the fact that we have a category and we can be cast in these things and we need to be counted, and this is what our representation is like, people are really trying to live up to casting more Middle Eastern and North African performers and things. And so when we get little wins in the box office, we end up becoming castable priorities. Rami Malek, right?
Yeah.
Played Freddie Mercury. Bohemian Rhapsody. So we've got a MENA performer who did a biopic film. That one MENA performer led the box office in 2019.
Yes,
I think he made $900 million, right? So it was the biggest grossing film. So with one MENA performer, and that was the one we had in all the films.
Yeah. And he's brilliant.
He made the most money out of all of the films.
So, Azita, you've said you have never played and you won't play a terrorist or a refugee. And I think a lot of folks will be really gratified to hear this. But just walk through it for us. Why?
Well, I have not yet played a terrorist or a refugee. And that's not to say never. I think if there's an excellent role and it's something that I'm like, you know what, this is something I really want to play. I feel they see the humanity in it. I will do it. Great. But to this day, nothing has felt anything more than gratuitous. Even being a part of the storyline has felt gratuitous to me in one way or the other. And so I have not done that. Do I think that everyone in the community should do that? No. I think that actors will take work because they have to take work. And I think it's important for them to take those stepping stones. The Black community is a wonderful example of this, Jian. Boys in the Hood was a film about gangbangers,
Yeah.
And John Singleton made this film. And we have incredible actors and a filmmaker that came out of a film that could be considered exploitative, right? And so, but had they not done this film and played into this stereotype that we want to work, Black Americans away from, we want to get we want more Wakandas, we want more heroes, we want more Idris Elbas, we want more Black James Bond. However, we needed to have a breakout film like this that touched upon a conversation in society in that given moment that was incredibly important.
But you do get, but Aziza, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you do get applause for saying I don't play a terrorist, and it is laudable for you and others like Maz Jobrani have said that too. That you stand up and say I don't want to be cast as some stereotypical terrorist and perpetuate those images. But we mentioned Navid Negahban earlier. The guy's getting a lot of airtime here, but he was on, and first of all, he makes the case that when he's playing someone like Abu Nazir in Homeland, he makes an effort to show that these people are not cardboard cutouts, bad guys, but are nuanced humans. But secondly, I was pushing him on this, and then at some point I thought, this is a guy who went through a terrorizing obstacle course of events to even get to the West. He lived in a car for his first 6 months in America. He's hustled all his life to be able to get work. He's done a million jobs, driving a cab, working as a salesman, doing whatever he can. Why am I giving him the gears for playing a terrorist, for getting a job? I mean, it's so I felt sort of bittersweet sweet about that. Go ahead.
Jian, if Navid didn't play Abu Nazir, he wouldn't have gotten the next role, because he wouldn't have gotten that kind of attention. And so, just like I said, had we not had those incredible actors in Boys in the Hood, we wouldn't have seen them in the next 10 films that they did or launched their careers in that way. And so we don't hear the Black community going back to them and saying, how dare you have played a gangbanger in Boys in the Hood? You're hurting our it's because there's so little representation for us.
Yes.
So little.
Yeah. That we don't want to only be in those roles.
So important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
However, an actor has to be able to break through that low-hanging fruit. He's got to break through that role in order to get the next job, and then to get the film, and then for him to get Aladdin. Had he not been Abu Nazir, he wouldn't have gotten Aladdin.
Right.
He didn't have known who he was. It's a part of breaking through in the business. And so even though for me, and I won't say never, I to this day have never done it. And I take great pride in that. It's something that when I read it, I go, this just doesn't feel right for me. It's not right for me.
So it has been offered to you to play some sort of terrorist.
All the time.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, so many times. And I think probably, and by the way, they're very fun roles to play. They're seductive, they're tough, they're layered, they're complex. When you're like a female terrorist leader, they're writing it, they're sassy, they're not something to turn your nose up, and it's money, and there's plenty of people that are working in those that have taken some of those jobs and then gone on to star in their own show, which doesn't have anything to do with that, and so they did get some positive exposure. So maybe if I had said, yes, let's go for it, let's play this, maybe I'd be even further along in my career and be able to open up more doors for more people like me. So I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying for me, it has not been the right path thus far. And if something presents itself and I'm like, you know what, I want to do this because one, I want to discuss this, or two, this is an important conversation that I need to have after this film comes out, that will give me a platform to speak more eloquently on these kinds of subjects to a much larger audience. Let's do it. Whatever it might be, if like the puzzle pieces work, then fine. But for now, no. But I don't hold it against anybody in our community. I've had young actors cry, telling me that that's all they get, and that's, they have to get a job and they have to feed their family. And I'm like, do not cry. I'm working hard to change the business so that you have more opportunities. But if you get that job, then at least you have credits and you'll have a name and you'll have, you know what I mean? Like, and it'll get you the next job. Like, it's okay. And so I just want to make sure that the community kind of creates some openness and some space to say, everybody's got to start somewhere. And if this is the unfortunate low-hanging fruit that we have to fight through in order to get the next job, so that we can then become Oscar Isaac, so that we can then get to, even though it was a brilliant part, Riz Ahmed and what's that? What was it called? The Night Of?
Oh, The Night Of, yeah.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Terrific film.
Yeah.
But, the whole thing, they're like trying to figure out if he's like this murderer, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
complicate, like everybody's like, it's got to be him. Like, it's he's a terrorist, you know what I mean? And he's like playing this in this whole thing, and it's so complicated and heavy and layered. And, that's a very complex role. And even though it wasn't exactly a terrorist, it definitely leaned into that.
No, but it is a nuanced role. I think that's where what Naveed was saying really applies. I would prefer that than just a sort of faceless, God love Michael J. Fox and my 80s pop culture, Back to the Future. But, when the Libyans appear, which are just a couple of crazy looking bearded guys, and with machine guns and try and shoot at little Marty or whatever his name was statement in Back to the Future at Michael J. Fox, they're just faceless bad guys who happen to be called
100%.
Libyans, right? That's what we want to avoid. And listen, by the way, thank you so much. You're so gracious. This is so great. The time you're giving us
narrative of where we are right now.
Right.
What?
I won't keep you forever. I promise. Just a couple more questions. I watched this feature film that you had a starring role in, Complete Unknown, in preparing for this interview, and it's a mystery starring Rachel Weisz and you're fantastic in it, and you speak Persian or Dari in the film. What was a little funny was that Azita you're essentially an American kid. You've spent your whole life in the States, but you had to be a Middle Eastern person with an accent in this film, which was good. It was a respectful role. But do you find it ironic that one of the biggest roles you've gotten requires you to speak English with an accent?
Actually, it's probably only the second or third time that I've gotten to do it, and I loved doing it, to be honest with you. It was escapism to me, away from what I've probably done 60 episodes of television where I've never had an accent. And to be able to play in the movies with a new voice was thrilling. It changed the way I moved. It honored the character's history a bit. It honored her journey with her husband, played by Michael Shannon, in the film, and the way that she couldn't communicate her needs and how frustrating that was for her in the way that he always understood them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the accent actually, to me, was a great tool, and I would love to work in them all the time. I just did a kind of low-key British Middle Eastern accent in another film called We Broke Up. And I absolutely loved it because, again, it made my shoulders a little different. And it definitely feeds into the creative aspect of storytelling. Now, it was, again, a nuanced leading role with an incredible cast that had nothing to do with terrorism or, geopolitical issues or anything along those lines. It was a bit of a romantic story. And so I didn't feel like there was anything working against me in working with the accent. I adore it and I love it. And so I'm more of that. In fact, if I could speak in an accent more, I would do it. I just think because it's also part of that getting away from being Azita and getting away from being.
That's why you went into acting. You wanted at least get to act.
Yeah, I want to get to act.
Yeah.
And I want to also dive into that experience of a woman who's 10 years into the country or 15 years into the United States and is still finding her way. I want to know that person. I knew her when I was little, you know, and so there's a part of her that still lives in me, and there's a part of her that's my mother, and there's a part of her that's my aunt. And so those are the gifts that I'm given in my makeup to be creative. And I'm not going to deny those parts of myself so long as they're not harming anything. There's nothing in there that I wouldn't want to play.
So before I let you go, let's come full circle back to where we started, and the MENA category and recognition and representation. And, you know, there is a paradoxical issue we seem to face when wanting recognition as a minority when it comes to people of Middle Eastern background and the MENA category. On the one hand, sometimes others don't always claim to see us as minorities, you know, and then to add to that complicated vortex, some members of our own community, as we intimated earlier in this chat, push back against us being seen as a minority. You know, when we had this program a month or two ago on this show about dealing with us being more visible as a minority, I used the term a few times, people of color, and the pushback that we got. I mean, literally thumbs down on YouTube, like people angry, like we're not people of color, you know, we're white people. Like, it was so profound, and it was like, guys, no one else is going to treat us as a minority and recognize that we are a minority if we don't see ourselves that way. So have you had to deal with that from other Afghans or from Iranians? And what do you say to them?
I mean, I've definitely navigated that with Iranians in the business here in Hollywood that are like, but we are white. And I'm like, oh, no, that's some ingrained racism within yourself that needs to kind of be rooted out. We have to recognize that being, you know, and it's so layered, Jian, because in order for us to have received citizenship, you know, 50 years ago, our skin had to be a certain color of white if we were from that part of the world. If we were too brown, then our citizenship was denied in the United States. So it's the coloring that was really important, that we were white enough to receive our citizenship. So we were white. And then there was pride in being white enough to be American, and to be accepted by the United States. Right. And so I think that there's that, again, that deep-seated shame and pain that pulls us away from our true, full identity and our authentic selves. And so that, I think what ends up happening is if we start to go more towards the fact that we are special, you know what I mean? That we are considered other, that we are different in other people's eyes, and that's a beautiful thing. And that uniqueness allows us to create texture and layers into every room we walk into, then that's kind of the gift and the journey towards where we have to come full circle as diaspora in the United States, in North America, in England, you know, that we aren't white, but that we are of our own identities and cultures, and we provide rich traditions into the United States space. But we are other, and people see us as other, and we need to start being proud of the fact that we're people of color.
This is a lot you've taken on when it comes to your advocacy work, and you're rightfully getting a lot of attention for it. Is it usurping your passion these days, as you see the path for Azita in the coming years? Do you see fighting for representation actually becoming more of what you're going to do than the acting itself?
I definitely think I'm in my purpose now more than ever. I think there was a reason why I didn't change my name. I think there's a reason why I showed up to Hollywood, having only been on a plane once before, not even owning luggage. I don't think it was so that I became some famous television actress or movie star. I think it was so that I could create this lane. I think I was meant to open these conversations. And I truly believe that, because it's something that is very seamless and simple for me to help others navigate this space. And so it is a big passion of mine. And sometimes it does take up all the space. And then I don't have room for my actually paying profession because I do all of this work for free. But I think that because it's in my heart, and because I know that when I'm doing this work and I'm providing this new path and opening these doors for the next generation of performers or for older performers or whomever to feel like they have a space, that was part of the purpose of why I ended up here in Hollywood and needed to see myself on television, because maybe it wasn't necessarily me, but maybe it's just someone that looks like me.
Azita, this has been energizing. It's been educational. It's been erudite. I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful for you. And I thank you so much for the time you've taken, really.
Jian, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to know you and to meet you and to know everything that you're doing for your community. And I'm grateful that you guys had an Afghan on. Thank you so much.
We've had more than one now. Come on.
Okay, good.
Thanks for this.
Wonderful.
Take care and be safe, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That is actress and founder of the MENA Arts Advocacy Coalition, Azita Ghanizada. Azita joined us from Los Angeles, California today. Right. The Thursday Roqe team has regathered around Azita Ghanizada. I very much enjoyed that. Captain Reza, Groovy Shaya, the fabulous Keon, back here in the studio. So, Keon?
She was delightful, very well spoken. I guess I wasn't really expecting that.
What were you expecting?
There's always that misconception with actors and actresses that they're not particularly intelligent. I think maybe that's
because
I wasn't prepared.
You say that because we work with Reza, so that's what you're used to.
But I appreciate people that do something outside of their profession and outside of their career. The work that she's doing through MENA, I think that's so important for our community. We need that differentiation because let's face it, we are different. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So why not embrace it?
She was more than just eloquent. She's such an inspirational story. She's doing it. And the thing that I loved about it, I'm just processing it all right now, but she wasn't complaining simply. She was being proactive. There's no part of that conversation we just had that felt like, poor me, poor me. She's representing. She's telling of her personal experience, and she's representing, and she's helping. And that means so much. And I also felt like there wasn't, after the beginning where we joke about it, I almost forgot that she's not Iranian. You know, like she's basically,
her
it's such a common experience. I mean, obviously the Afghans and Iranians are very, very similar, but I just assumed.
But I mean, Afghan, Irani, that's kind
you think it's the same?
It's kind of the same. Let's face it.
It's not the same, but it's very close. We're from like Tajikistan.
Yeah, we were all a part of the same nation at one point.
Yeah, but so was the whole world then.
But true. We're all Persian.
We all come from the same. That's right. Everyone is Persian. They are all Persian. Mexican, they are Persian. Russian, they are Persian.
I swear to God, my grandfather used to be like, یون میدونی اوباما حسین اوباما خوزستان
اوباما خودمون
شکیرا ایرانیه دیگه همون شکیبا
George Clooney's from Isfahan. All these movies.
But I actually remember her from that. She's on one episode of Entourage, and she was so attractive to me in that one episode that I didn't recognize her by her name, but as soon as I Googled her, I was like, oh my God, that's that girl.
Now I'm saving up Reza here because I invoked your name, Reza, in the interview. Sorry, but can you turn Reza up a little bit, Shai? Because I didn't actually. I hope I represented you well, but I know that you don't necessarily agree with those Oscar changes. So what did you think of Azita?
Well, let me put it this way. I love what she's doing, and what you said in terms of she's not whining and she's really like trying to find be part of a solution and not the problem, and is because I think she's extremely intelligent and dissected the problem very well. She knows what the issue is, the root of the issue. So now she's with MENA and everything else that she's been a part of, she's trying to essentially help representation in Hollywood. However, that being said, and I completely understand that from an actor's point of view, right? And what you said that you introduced me as Captain Reza, an actor, being part of the show, and I am an actor. I studied acting first and initially, and then moved behind the scene, but I primarily consider myself a filmmaker because I made more films than I've been in them, and television shows and stuff like that. So the point that I take issue with the new guidelines and rules of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences is not necessarily the standard A or group A, because there are different standards that have been issued. Group A, standard A, is amazing. It's fantastic, and especially if you're an actor or an actress. Representation, there's got to be a certain amount of actors of different diverse backgrounds and whatnot. But Group B or Standard B focuses on behind the scene and production tasks, which forces filmmakers, producers and whatnot to definitely have more than two departments, heads of departments of production to be from diverse backgrounds.
And that's bad?
It is bad, and I'll tell you why. Especially when you're forced into doing that, and I'll tell you why. I make movies, right? And I've directed plenty of films. So, there are DOPs or director of photographies, for people who may not know, people who are in charge of cameras and make sure the film looks amazing, that I work with. And I've never worked with a non-white DOP, and I'm specifically speaking in Canada, who I've been happy with in terms of the quality of their work. And that's the reality of it. So
that's your unscientific survey of the folks that
but that can't be dismissed, especially when I'm looking like from an outside, from a point of view, an audience, that may be a small insignificant factor.
But you realize that's always the argument, right? The argument will always be, we couldn't cast an Iranian guy, we couldn't cast a black guy, we couldn't cast a South Asian woman because we couldn't find one who's as good as this person. We couldn't find, and the only way we're going to get in, and that's just not true. There's how is it possible that there's billions of brown people around the world and you can't find one who's good at this, right?
I'll tell you why, and think about it. I'm not a white person, and I'm objecting to this.
Of course, and I appreciate your point of view.
Yeah, and it's simply because, for instance, there are a lot of other obstacles in the way. Like in Canada, for instance, we have a certain way of getting funding from government bodies, telefilm and whatnot, that you can fund your movies with. For instance, I would love to work with the editor of Asghar Farhadi. I think she's amazing and incredible, and I looked her up, but I can't. You know why?
Why?
It's not because, and she's a minority, obviously, but I can't because she's not a Canadian citizen. And I can't get funding if I don't have Canadian citizens. So there are different obstacles. Right.
So there's different obstacles. So I don't want to get too in the weeds. Yeah. But all right, I appreciate that. But I also think, something that really struck me, for example, in the interview is when she said, I sort of was questioning her. Somewhat I was playing devil's advocate, of course, because as you can tell through the interview, I agree with almost everything she's saying. But at some point I say, well, does it make a difference if the person's name is Siddiqui or Gomez or something like that? And she said, well, yeah, it does actually. When you go to, when the credits roll at the end, and you see that it normalizes people like us being, roles that have been cast. That was a little citation. That's something small that it's not a seismic change, but it makes a really big difference. Those kind of things are not about. The Oscars. That is a contentious because it's a quota, and I get where you're coming from, and I knew that. I already know that argument, and I see the argument for those who think it's a great thing, but But beyond that, these are not huge changes, you know. Invite non-white, conceive of the roles as non-white, you know, possibly, right? Like, I mean, these are the things she's suggesting that are actually brilliant because they really do make a difference.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
Yeah. And let me tell you this, though. You know what was interesting? Because we had, for people who don't know, we're sitting in a studio, and we had Ponta, our graphic designer, who walked into the studio to the control room as we were listening to the interview. She was so captivated by the interview. And she sat down and listened to the whole thing, and I looked over, and she had tears in her eyes.
Wow.
And that was amazing to me. And she's here.
Ponta's right there?
Yeah.
All right,
she's here. I want to bring her on and get her opinions.
Do you want to come?
mind.
Do you want to come? Oh, you're just going to use Reza's?
You want to come in?
Do you want to come in, Ponta?
Yeah.
Okay, come on over.
All right, there you go.
All right. Or you?
Oh, you want to come into the
no,
studio?
she's gonna use Shai as
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all right, go ahead.
Hello.
So you were listening and you liked what you. This is the first time you've listened to almost all the. You've been here since the beginning of the show. Ponta does all the graphics for the show and does but anything artistic that you see with respect to Roqe. Ponta does, especially in social media. Works with Sarah, and so. Ponta, this is the first time you've actually walked in and wanted to talk about one of the interviews. Although I know you've liked some of the other ones too. What is it? Why did you feel so strongly about this one?
First of all, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yes. Today. Yes.
Into the mic.
Into the mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Today, I decided to come and have a seat here and just listen to the show. Before this interview, I had no idea who is Azita.
Okay.
I had no idea what's her job. But after listening, اصلا surprised شدم.
You got really surprised. میتونی فارسی بگی. I get fine.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Her Farsi is so cute too. I love it.
Did you get emotional because you relate to her story? Did it sound familiar to you? Because I know you had quite a journey to get here as well.
Yes. During the interview, I was deeply in her world. She's a young, strong Middle Eastern girl, and she fights against her old culture, like in family in Middle East, you know. And in the same time, I found in the same time she fights against the image of who comes from media, the image of our culture, our life in America or Europe, you know, because media sometimes some medias are our enemy.
Yeah.
And in the same time, she fights by two ways and. Eleganie, and she won. I feel it.
But why did you get teared up? You almost got emotional.
It's hard question, but yeah. Let me explain something else, Reza. I feel, no, I don't feel. I see people when people are moving outside of Iran. They say yes. The half of the city was under our family name. We was too rich, open-minded family. Blah 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 blah. We call it love dar غربت. And people want to hide mostly. They want to hide the negative side of the past. In the life, but she was really honest, and she used this negative side as something for growing, and it was awesome. And in the same time, من یه فارسی میگم. من خیلی ازش هم انگلیسی یاد گرفتم هم درس زندگی یاد گرفتم. Seriously. I love the way then she look at the life. I love it.
But we've had to jump on to Reza's question. We've had so many different guests on the program. many of whom artists. You're an artist. Many, some young women, some different voices who've made a journey to the West the way you did and your family did. I am curious why Azita in particular had such a profound effect on you. You're so right that she's very open about that. Growing up with no money, or not, not having Barbie dolls, and not and having to fight through a conservative family. And can you expand a little bit more? You can do so in Farsi if you want, on what it was that really affected you about her.
Maybe because I'm the fighter too. Since I was a child, I try to fight against mullahs, against hijab, against some old fashion style in our culture. Even I can be honest, even tattoo. I have tattoo, and I got this tattoo because I want to say no. I want to live how I like, even if I don't like tattoos. Wow. I was child, but I want to be honest. That's why maybe I find the same point with her life, because I have to say bravo to her, and I like to be like her.
So did Azita have that kind of effect on you, Kian? It's interesting. My own personal story, I'm not always that open. I don't, I try to forget the dark stuff. Mind you, I didn't go through what she did, but the whole refugee story and going to school and facing racism and not having toys and lying about getting toys every Christmas. She was so open and honest about that. And not just that, she took it a few steps further. She's taking that and helping others. She's giving back to the acting community based on the experience that she had, because she knows how hard it is to get these jobs. She could be a selfish person. She could say, no, I had to endure all this struggle, so why should I help anybody else? Some people think that way, but she's so generous and so thoughtful and giving to start this organization and do this. So I have a lot of respect. Even though Reza doesn't appreciate it. You see?
No, I totally appreciate it. I'm still impressed by what Ponta said. Like what you just said, I don't even like tattoo, but I got it as a sign of rebellions, I guess. Yeah. Like that's...
It takes a very brave woman to pack her bags at age 17 and just move to Hollywood with the culture that she has. That is impressive.
By the way, Ponta, I mean, we will do this maybe, to tell Ponta's story, it would be, as we all know, each one of us has these stories, and Ponta probably has maybe the most spectacular story of strength. You left Iran as a teenager,
age of 17,
as 17 as well, and against the wishes of your family, and you went to different parts of the world, and you got an education, and you made a life for yourself, and so now I'm thinking about it, it makes a lot of sense that Azita resonated for you. Yeah.
You also went against your family's wishes too. You came from from what I remember at least, you had a strict family in some sense, no?
No. I mean, my family try to keep me with themselves always, because I'm the only child. But I try to not be loose and be like یعنی روی پای خودم بایستم، بتونم کار کنم، بتونم زندگی کنم، زندگی رو بفهمم.
You wanted to be able to live, understand life, and do work and be your own woman. Yeah.
Independent. Yeah.
Yeah, independent. Wow. Thank you, Ponta. Thank you, Reza, for
huge
bringing
accent. I'm sorry.
No, that was great. That was great.
Fantastic.
It's good to have you finally. We wanted you to come talk on the show. This
fighter.
is a good reason. Yeah. Okay, so give Shaya back his microphone.
Okay.
Thanks, Ponta.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Merci. Well, that's full marks there all around for Azita. She's having a profound effect on our staff.
She was a surprise, I think, for me, for Ponta. I think from a lot of us.
She was great.
Yeah, she was wonderful.
Great. All right, everybody's here. It's time. Thursday, letter of the week. Letters. Letter of the weeks. Letters of the week. There we go.
Okay, so last week on episode 46, we had a feature interview with Iranian-American comedian and actor, Mr. Max Amini. On YouTube, we have Ali Khalili. He wrote, I got a completely different picture of Max Amini after this interview. Very well done, Roqe team.
Nice.
Very nice. And, okay, so there's no name listed for this username, so nobody give me slack
blame
for
you.
this. Yeah.
Right.
Username FGKURI, so FG Kuri, let's say, wrote, what a beautiful episode. Keep up the good work.
Nice.
Nicely said. And then on Instagram, again, there's no name listed here, so it's username Mahshid_Sol. She wrote, this was amazing. Thanks for interviewing Max. Can you interview Goldschifte too?
I like the thanks for interviewing Max. What's the correlation between Max and Goldschifte?
Acting and Hollywood. And,
I guess.
Maybe she's just a fan.
Yeah.
Just a fan, yeah. I really enjoyed your interview with Farid Zalan.
Can you
interview
Andy as well?
Can you interview? Yeah. No, it has to be something completely different.
Random. Goldschifte is lovely. I'm sure.
Yeah, we'd love to have Goldschifte on the show.
of
Absolutely.
course.
100%.
All right. As well, last week on episode 47, we had a feature interview with actor, dancer, artist Shahrukh Mushkin Qalam.
Yes.
Shahrukh Mushkin Qalam.
That's right.
Tongue twister. So we have a lot of people that wrote into that episode, which I quite enjoyed myself. On YouTube, we have Hamid Kuchak. He wrote, great interview as usual. Shahrukh to me is a multi-dimensional artist. We've seen him perform in theater, dance, and recite Rumi poetry masterfully. Not only is his work easy on the eyes, but also so pleasing on hearts as well.
Beautifully said.
Very nice.
And that goes a long way because I think, I might be wrong, but is it the same Hamid Kuchak who's given us the painting?
I gotta think it's gotta be the same Hamid Kuchak. Yeah.
So
Thank you, Hamid, for the piece of art and for weighing in on the artist.
I didn't even realize that, huh? And then as well on YouTube, we have, again, username Xerxes the Great. By the way, I love that name, Xerxes. I'm naming my firstborn son that, if I ever have one. Anyway, he says, Dear Jian, stay on course and remain the phoenix that you are.
Oh.
Very beautiful.
Well, given that it's Xerxes the Great saying that, I feel like I have to follow that advice. Thank you for that.
And then we have a Amir Rezai on Instagram wrote, in quotes, Sagabu.
We have to set this up. We have to set this up, Kenzo.
Yeah.
So we had a story last week about, I told a story about my dog Oogie and the skunk, which we learned was Rasu in Farsi. And I wasn't sure what the word for skunk was, so I suggested it might be Sagabu.
That makes more sense. Yeah, that makes more sense than Rasu, but anyway, so yeah. So then we have Amir Rezai, that's, what did he say? He says, Sagabu, lol, you guys and Kion Docht have an excellent sense of humor. I found out about Roqe a couple months ago and was playing the catch-up game listening to old episodes, in brackets he has, on Spotify, of course. To get a taste of what the future looks like, I tuned into the latest episode this morning while I was driving to work. You should have seen the stupid grin that I couldn't get off my face even for a second when Jian was telling the Rasu story. Way to go, Roqe team.
Nice. Thanks, Amir Rezai. Glad you found us. That's not the letter of the week?
No, but it could have been. It could have been.
Always checking.
And then we have Sultan BC wrote, Vay, khak bar saram, weed mikeshe. And of course he's referring to
Shahrukh.
Shahrukh. He said he tried weed for the first time and went on stage. Sultan goes on by saying, the effects of cannabis are something we need to talk about more in our culture. It's helped me with my PTSD from the war and torture so much. Even the CBD kind, that doesn't make you high, is not popular. I wrote in Finglish so your crew can read it. By the way, I can read a little Farsi. But yeah, I agree. We should, that's something that we do need to make, it's such a taboo. cannabis in general. Like I recently opened up to my mom.
Is it though? Is it still?
It is with the older generations.
Yes.
Like my parents, I only recently said, by the way, I smoke weed once in a while. My mom was like, "Khak bar saram, mawad mikeshi."
Dirt on my head.
Yeah. And I had to explain, listen, like I have severe I don't want to say it again, but PMS every month, and the only thing that takes away the pain and really makes it is cannabis. I'm telling you, it's life-changing for me. So yeah, I agree. It's something that we need to educate our culture more.
Right.
But you're right. The younger Persians, I guess, it's no big deal for them, but it's the older generations. Yeah. Khob, we have Zila Ibrahimi, wrote on Instagram.
It's ZH, right? It might be Gila.
Gila. Oh, you're right. Gila.
Although my sister's name is Gila and it's just with a J.
J.
But ZH is also J. So
Gila. Oh, I think that sounds better actually with the Z. It's written better, let's say. Gila Ibrahimi, she wrote Taziyeh, or what was traditionally called Siyavush Khani.
Taziyeh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Taziyeh.
We're back.
Or what was traditionally called Siyavush Khani was not the only form of theater or performance in Iran. Ruhozi, Ma'arakegiri, Naqali, Khayme Shab.
Sorry, Ruhozi, Ma'arakegiri.
Okay, maybe you read this.
No, go ahead.
What you said, Naqali, Khayme Shabbazi, and many more forms of the same kind were common too. What makes them different from Western performing arts is that they were mainly performed on the streets. So they were available to the public before being available to the elites of society. I'm sorry to hear that your guest finds them, quote unquote, ridiculous. They were not ridiculous, just different than Western forms of theater. This finds its roots in the different ways human beings experience and express their emotions around the world. There is nothing ridiculous about them. By the way, thank you, Shaya, for the Sohail Nafisi piece. Oh.
You're very welcome.
All right.
So, yeah.
So that's a response to Shahrukh.
Yeah, he was saying how back in the day there wasn't really a form of theater when he was first growing up in Iran. And then on Facebook.
Thank you, Gila.
On Facebook, we have Neela Farshad. She says, Jian Jan, you are an excellent interviewer, and I enjoy listening to Roqe podcast. I wish you, Groovy Shaya, Captain Reza, and Kian all the success. Proud to be Iranian.
Nice. That's not the letter of the week?
No.
That's pretty good.
I know. It is
I would have given that one a letter.
Yeah, well, it gets better. On Instagram as well. Again, no name, sorry. It's just Nikki.
That's a name.
Yeah, it is a name, but it's not.
No name, it's just Nikki.
I don't have her last name. Like, that's her username. Nikki. She says, one of the best interviews. It allowed the listener to feel and love the real Shahrukh. Thank you, Jianjun. Shahrukh is a unique jewel. Thank you, Shahrukh, for not just nourishing our feelings, but educating us, as you always do.
Nice.
Very beautiful.
Is that not the letter of the week?
I know, it's getting better and better.
Pretty good.
Competition's really heavy this week.
By the way, I think it's Shahrukh.
Shahrukh.
Yeah.
Shahrukh.
Thank you, Jian.
Thank you, Shaya. I'm doing your work for you there, buddy. Yeah.
Your Farsi's improved, Jian. What can I say?
Kayfish kuke.
What?
Kayfish kuke.
That sounds so funny to the ears. And then Hossein Vahid wrote, Hi, Jian Jan. As I mentioned before, I have been listening carefully to each of your episodes. With respect to Shahrukh Mushkin Qalam, I just wanted to correct him that we had theaters back in the day, even before World War I, in Rasht, the capital of Gilan, in the north of Iran. All right, so a lot of corrections this week.
Yeah, there were some corrections with respect to the theater. I think Shahrukh was speaking of some things he knows, but there's a couple of people on our team too who were. It's like American politics at this point. You have to fact check as they speak.
Yeah. You know? He said something else.
Let's go to the fact check.
He said something else that stood out to me that I meant to ask or Google later. He said that 80% of your personality is developed until the age of 9. So is that true? 80% of your personality is mainly between that age.
It may be true, but I think we should have an authority.
We'll fact check.
We'll fact check that with one of our resident psychologists we've had on the show.
Let's call someone up. Well, look at that. It's the letter of the week time.
Yes.
Oh,
Finally.
Thought you'd never get here.
Exhausted.
You know what, Jian?
It's like sitting there and having the golach walk by.
Thanks a lot, Jian.
Is it golach?
Gulach.
Oh,
Yeah.
gulach. It's like having the gulach walk by.
Get out of
These
here. The letter of the week this week goes to Saeed Homayuni, who wrote to us from Quebec on YouTube. He wrote, "Thank you, Jian and Co. It is actually excellent that you're back, and even better that you started Roqe." Very, very well said.
Thank you.
Interviewing Persian diaspora icons. I remember when I was a student, I had a notebook and was collecting names of Iranian scholars, artists, and popular people from around the world. Your list has gone so very far, and I thank you for introducing some interesting personalities with exciting profiles, expertise, and backgrounds. I hope one day in a free Iran, all of them can return and help develop the country in diverse areas and fields. Keep going. And yes, your Persian is excellent.
Boom.
Keep using it more with a wink face.
Merci عزیزم سعید جون سعید جون کبک خیلی خوش اومدید خوش این چیزا رو گفتید.
What? Okay, your Farsi is disintegrating. Maybe just keep it small.
Just because you can't understand it. Shia understood it.
He's like politely nodding.
ببین خیلی letter of the week خوبی بود.
واقعا لذت بردم. What is so wrong with my
معلوم
Farsi?
چه که یه اپیزود تکمیل بعد کیان و من فقط توی فارسی بکنیم.
Reza and Shai would just be sitting behind the glass, losing it, laughing. The whole
That was a great letter of the week.
Yeah,
Thank you to
beautiful.
Saeed.
Thank you, Saeed.
Quebec. Thank you to our amazing team here. We'll see you next week with the letters of the week. This is full time for Roqe for today. Thank you, Captain Reza. Thank you, the fabulous Keon. Thank you, Shia. Our next show, by the way, our next show will be number 50.
Wow.
We have a very special guest joining us. That's next Monday. If you have any comments on this show, if you want to help us out somehow, if you want to ask any questions, if you want to make any comments, info@roqemedia.com, info@roqemedia.com. Our website is roqemedia.com, where you can link to all of our platforms, being YouTube, Instagram, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, Telegram. That can all be found at roqemedia.com. Thank you to our team, Susan, Ponta. It was nice to hear you here today. Sarah, Keon, Roham, Mehrdad, Mohammed, Navon, Reza, and Groovy Shia. Thanks to all of you. Mizun Bashid.